3:35 in the morning, Easter Sunday. A quiet harbor somewhere off the coast of the Bahamas, still in dark except for the glow of security cameras slowly sweeping the yard. And there he is. Brian Hooker, moving through the shadows like he owns the night. Dark shorts, a blue and white fisherman shirt, blue slides, no running, no screaming, no desperation in his face whatsoever. His wife Lynette had just vanished into the black ocean. And this man, her husband, was strolling around a boatyard in the dark, checking his watch over and over again, and clutching a mysterious dark tablet-like device in his left hand. A device that completely disappeared before rescue teams arrived a few hours later. Now, federal investigators have obtained brand new evidence that just obliterated everything Brian told authorities. The military is back. A 154-foot Coast Guard cutter is cutting through the water right now. And they brought back Maggie, a forensic canine who can literally smell a body through 30 feet of ocean. Stay with me, because this story gets darker before it gets answered. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you never miss a case update. We are following the story in real time, and you do not want to fall behind. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? I want to know if this case is reaching people all over the country tonight. Before we talk about evidence, I need you to understand who Lynette was, because she was not just a name in a case file. She was a real woman, a diver, an adventurer, someone who loved the ocean with everything she had. Lynette Hooker was the kind of person who threw herself fully into life. She and Brian sailed together on their boat, a vessel called the Soulmate. But behind that romantic name was a relationship rotting from the inside out. People who knew Lynette describe a woman who was warm, capable, and deeply loved by her family, a woman who reached out, who tried to get help, who packed her bags more than once trying to escape a man who terrified her. But here is the detail that will stay with you through this entire video. 3 weeks before she disappeared, Lynette Hooker walked into a travel agency or pulled up a booking site and bought a plane ticket, a one-way out. The flight was scheduled for March 11th. She had a plan. She had a date circled. She was 2 weeks away from permanent safety. She never made that flight. She vanished on Easter weekend, somewhere in the dark water off Marsh Harbor, in the Bahamas, and Brian Hooker was the last person to see her alive. Now let's walk through what Brian says happened that night, because his story matters, not because it is believable, but because every single piece of it is now falling apart. According to Brian, the two of them were out on the water aboard the Soulmate on Easter weekend. At some point, he claims Lynette fell overboard. He says he tried desperately to find her. He claims that his small boat tender, a tiny 8-foot vessel with an electric motor, drifted helplessly for 9 hours in the rough winds and high waves before he finally made it to the boatyard and reported her missing. 9 hours, drifting helplessly. That is the story. Now let's talk about what actually lines up and what absolutely does not. First, the weather. Brian described terrifying conditions, howling winds, rough seas. He painted a picture of a man fighting for his life just to stay afloat. But maritime experts who reviewed the conditions that night say something very different. Yes, there were winds, 20-knot gusts that would make navigating a small vessel genuinely dangerous. But here is what Brian did not count on. The boat had a motor, an electric motor, and electric motors leave data trails. The tracking data from that vessel does not show a helpless man drifting at the mercy of wind and current. It shows deliberate navigation, specific headings, purposeful stops at specific locations under the cover of darkness. He was not drifting, he was driving. And the Coast Guard knows exactly where he went. Because the battery range on that small motor was limited. Whatever Brian did that night, whatever he dropped, whatever he hid, it is close, it is within range. And right now, a military search team is going directly to those coordinates. Now I need you to picture this footage, because once you see it in your mind, you cannot unsee it. It is 3:35 in the morning. The boatyard is quiet. Most of the property is dark, except for the bright lights near the main building where staff are stationed and where Brian could have immediately walked up and said, "My wife fell into the ocean. Call the Coast Guard. Call everyone." He did not do that. Instead, the security cameras caught Brian Hooker doing something that made investigators stop cold. He walked, not ran, walked along the dark edges of the property. He deliberately stayed in the shadows, moving away from the lit areas where help was immediately available. He was not disoriented. He was not panicking. Witnesses who were present that morning described his demeanor as eerily calm. One harbor staff member said he was, quote, cool as a cucumber. But that is not the most disturbing part of the footage. In his left hand, Brian was holding something. Investigators describe it as a dark, tablet-like device, rectangular, flat, clearly electronic. He was looking down at it repeatedly. He was also checking his watch. over and over again, like a man on a schedule, like a man waiting for something specific to happen at a specific time. And here is what makes that tablet so critical to this investigation. When the rescue crews arrived a few hours later, that device was gone. It was not on Brian. It was not on the boat. It was not anywhere. Where does a device go in the middle of the night at a marina? Federal investigators believe that tablet may hold critical data, navigation logs, communication records, or something else Brian needed to make disappear before law enforcement started asking questions. The fact that he had it at 3:35 a.m. and it vanished completely before sunrise is now one of the most heavily scrutinized pieces of missing evidence in this entire case. This single moment, caught on camera in the dark, is exactly why federal authorities stopped treating this as a missing person case and started treating it as something else entirely. Hold on. Before we get into the most damning piece of physical evidence in this case, I need a quick second from you. Drop a like right now if you are still with me, and tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are right now? I read every single one. Okay, now, the pink weight belt. This is where things get very, very dark. Let's get into the mechanics of why Brian's story physically cannot be true, because this is the part that blew the entire case wide open. Brian claimed that his small boat tender was pushed across the water for 9 straight hours by wind and waves alone. No engine, just helpless drifting. But here is the problem with that. The vessel was equipped with an electric motor, and that motor was active that night. Maritime tracking data recovered from the vessel tells a completely different story. The data shows the boat making deliberate course corrections. It shows stops at specific coordinates. It shows navigational choices that do not happen by accident when a vessel is simply drifting at the mercy of nature. Brian was steering. He had a destination, or multiple destinations, and he moved toward them with purpose. Now here is where the tracking data becomes the most powerful tool investigators have. The electric motor on that boat had a finite battery charge. Coast Guard engineers have calculated exactly how far that motor could travel before it died. That calculation creates a defined radius, a geographic boundary around where Brian was that night. And everything he did, every stop he made, every place he visited, it all happened inside that boundary. Which means whatever he dropped or hid that night is still there. It did not drift away. It is sitting in a specific location, in a specific depth of water, waiting. The Coast Guard is not searching randomly. They are working from a map, a precise data-driven map of exactly where Brian went in those 9 hours. And now they have Maggie. Lynette Hooker was a diver. She knew the water. She had gear, real gear, including a bright pink dive weight belt. For anyone who does not know, a dive weight belt is a piece of equipment worn around a diver's waist. It is loaded with dense lead weights, anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, specifically designed to counteract a diver's natural buoyancy and keep them submerged deep underwater. Without one, a diver floats naturally toward the surface. With one weighted down, a body stays down. When federal investigators searched the soulmate from bow to stern, they found almost everything you would expect on a sailboat. But Lynette's bright pink dive weight belt was completely gone, not misplaced, not floating nearby, gone. This single missing item is now considered one of the most significant pieces of hidden evidence in the entire investigation. The question investigators are sitting with, the one they have not yet been able to answer publicly, is this. Did Brian Hooker use his own wife's dive equipment to make sure she would not come back up? He has not been formally charged with a crime, but the weight belt is gone. Lynette is gone. And the tracking data places Brian in the water, navigating deliberately, on the night she disappeared. The dots are forming a picture. And that picture is terrifying. Here is what investigators found when they started pulling on the thread of Brian Hooker's past, because this was not a man who snapped one night out of nowhere. This was a pattern. Court records out of Florida reveal that Brian Hooker was previously brought to trial for allegedly choking his own 12-year-old daughter. Multiple witnesses took the stand and described the abuse under oath. The details that came out in that courtroom were harrowing. His daughter, a child, testified against her own father. The jury ultimately acquitted him. His defense argued that the child had false memories. Brian walked free, but his daughter never spoke to him again. She cut off all contact permanently. When your own child refuses to be in the same room as you after a trial like that, it tells you something no jury verdict can erase. And the pattern did not stop with his daughter. Lynette's parents and close friends have come forward with a series of disclosures that are deeply disturbing. Lynette told multiple people that Brian had choked her so violently on at least one occasion that she lost consciousness completely. During one attack, Lynette took photographs of her own back, badly bruised, and sent them directly to a friend. She described Brian slamming her against the frame of the sailboat while wrapping his hands around her neck. Then she told that friend what Brian had whispered in her ear during that assault. He told her he should have finished the job. Let that land for a second. A man looked at his injured wife and told her he regretted not finishing it. Lynette reached out. She tried. She packed her bags more than once and begged her mother for help. Her mother called domestic abuse shelters in Florida trying to find her a safe place to land. But Lynette kept going back. As anyone who has ever been in a situation like hers will understand, leaving is the most dangerous moment. The statistics are clear. The risk of fatal violence spikes when a victim tries to leave. Lynette knew the danger. She bought the plane ticket anyway. March 11th. She was 2 weeks from the door. I want to pause here for just a moment. If you have ever known someone in a situation like Lynette's, someone who kept going back, who people on the outside could not understand, drop a comment below. You do not have to share details. Just say, I understand. Because so many people watching this right now do. And if this case is hitting close to home for any reason, please know that support exists and you are not alone. Now, let's talk about what is happening in the water right now. Because the military operation unfolding in the Bahamas is unlike anything this case has seen. The Margaret Norvell is a 154-foot United States Coast Guard cutter. It carries a crew of 24 specialized personnel and is built for exactly this kind of intense, complex maritime operation. That vessel is currently cutting through the waters near Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas, and it is heading for a very specific location. On board is Maggie, a legendary cadaver dog from the Broward County Sheriff's Office in South Florida. And what Maggie can do sounds like science fiction until you look at her track record. Here is the science. When a body rests underwater, it naturally produces microscopic decomposition oils. Those oils are lighter than water. They travel upward, slowly, continuously, until they break through the surface of the ocean and enter the open air above. These oils are invisible to human senses, but Maggie can detect them. She sits at the edge of a fast-response boat, nose to the open air, and she can pinpoint the exact spot on the water's surface where those invisible oils are rising from 30 feet below. She has done it before. Her alerts have led investigators directly to underwater remains in cases where human divers found nothing. The most significant detail about this deployment is where they are sending her. During the initial search, local authorities only searched the areas where Brian claimed Lynette went overboard. They took his word for where the incident happened. They never searched the actual path he traveled that night. This time, investigators are using the tracking data to send Maggie directly to the untouched zone south of the boatyard, the exact corridor Brian navigated during those mysterious 9 hours. If Lynette's remains or any biological evidence are in that area, Maggie will find the surface signature within seconds of passing over it. But the search team is not relying on Maggie alone. They have also deployed a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV. This is the same category of deep-water technology used in the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. It is an underwater drone capable of descending into depths where human divers cannot safely go, scanning the ocean floor for hours without surfacing, transmitting real-time video back to the crew above. The ROV is being sent into a specific location, a deep underwater canyon near Tulu Cut, an area with a drop-off that plunges 40 feet straight down. Local maritime experts have been clear about what navigating Tulu Cut means at night. With 20-knot winds gusting through that channel, taking a small 8-foot boat through that cut in the dark is essentially a death wish. The current is unpredictable. The rocks are close. No sane person would attempt it without an extremely powerful reason. Federal investigators believe Brian had that reason. The deep pockets of that canyon, dark, cold, and far below the reach of any casual search, are exactly the kind of place you would choose if you needed something to stay hidden. Investigators believe evidence, or possibly remains, may have been dropped deliberately into those depths. Simultaneously, authorities are preparing to pull the soulmate, Brian and Lynette's sailboat, completely out of the water and into a secure dry dock facility for a full forensic examination. Every surface, every drain, every corner of that vessel is about to be processed as a potential crime scene. Brian Hooker has not been formally charged with a crime. Not yet. But let's look at where investigators actually stand. They have security footage of him behaving in a way that no innocent person could explain. They have maritime tracking data that directly contradicts his 9-hour drift story. They have a missing dive weight belt that should have been on that boat. They have a history of documented, escalating violence against the woman he married. And they have the testimony of people who heard Lynette's own words. Words describing a man who told her he should have finished the job. Federal investigators stopped calling this a missing person case. That shift in classification matters. It means they are building something. And now the coast is in the water with the most advanced search technology available. A forensic K9, an underwater drone, and a precise navigation map of everywhere Brian went on the night Lynette disappeared. A woman bought a plane ticket on March 11th. She was 2 weeks from the door. She never made the flight. Someone needs to answer for that. This is the part of the story that is still being written. Maggie is in the water. The ROV is scanning the canyon. The soulmate is about to go into dry dock. We are going to have answers, and when they come, we will be right here covering every single development. If this video meant something to you today, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with someone who follows true crime. And drop a comment below. What is the weather like where you are right now? Tell me you're out there. Tell me Lynette's story reached you. The next video is coming, and what the forensic team finds on the soulmate may be the piece that changes everything one final time.